So in this video, I would like to explain the Russian subjunctive. The Russian subjunctive is a grammatical mood that designates an action that someone would do or that something would happen if specific circumstances are met. It is based on subjectivity with verbs that are put in the conditional mood, and the Russian subjunctive heavily relies on the conditional because it is a mood and not a tense. The Russian subjunctive has many different uses that may refer to real or unreal actions that take place in the past, present, or future. The most important usages of the Russian subjunctive are complex if sentences in the conditional mood, emotional desire, such as expressing a wish, desire, request, or command, the conditional mood with the word чтобы, also known as subordinate clauses, and suggestions and advice. In my previous Russian videos, I already mentioned these concepts, which all rely on the conditional mood, and I already made a video about the conditional in Russian. I would highly recommend going back and rewatching it so that the subjunctive feels much simpler because again, it uses the conditional mood. Moreover, the Russian subjunctive designates an action that someone would do or that something would happen if specific circumstances are met. The conditional mood expresses the same thing, which is why they're connected, especially using words like если, which means if, and бы, which means would. What makes the subjunctive and conditional very different is that they're both moods and not tenses, and their complex constructions correspond to how they're formed in English, which uses verbs and past participles. As I said in my conditional video, we need the word бы, which is a conjugation of быть, meaning would, which is placed before conjugated imperfective or perfective verbs that come from the past tense. Sometimes бы can be shortened to бы, which only happens when the word бы is placed after a word that ends in a hard vowel. Let's have a short reminder. Here we have the verbs работать and поработать, meaning to work. Работать in the imperfective conditional would be я бы работал, ты бы работал, он бы работал. This conjugation applies only if the subject is masculine. Я бы работала, ты бы работала, она бы работала. This conjugation applies to feminine subjects. In the plural, the conjugations are мы бы работали, вы бы работали, они бы работали. Because of the imperfective, the meaning of the phrases is I would be working, you would be working, and so on. In the perfective, we have the same words, but with the prefix po, and the meaning now is would work, because the perfective indicates an action that would be done successfully. This is how the conditional mood works in Russian. In addition to the subjunctive, the conditional in Russian is also very useful when it's put in if sentences that express a hypothetical situation where circumstances would be different. It's also very similar to how the conditional is formed in English, which uses verbs and past participles, along with complex if sentences, emotional desire, the conditional mood with the word чтобы, and advice. In my conditional video, I mentioned all of these concepts, and I said that they are for a future video, and now that this video has come out, we can finally cover them in the Russian subjunctive. To form the Russian subjunctive mood, we add the word бы to the relevant imperfective or perfective past tense verbs. Formally, бы will always come before the conjugated verbs, but because Russian is expressive, any word can be placed in any order. To make learning simple, I'll always put бы before the verb, so that it's more similar to English. Let's also not forget that бы changes to бы if the word before it ends in a hard vowel. This system is the same as in the conditional mood, which I showed a minute ago. Let's begin with complex if sentences in the conditional mood. The subjunctive mood with the word если, which means if, denotes present or future actions that could be possible if some conditions are met. To form complex if sentences, we use the construction если бы, where the subjunctive mood uses бы in both clauses of the sentence. Because the subjunctive is the last grammatical concept in Russian, I'm going to use every Russian concept together that I've shown so far in every example, so expect these sentences to be complex. Если у меня были бы деньги, я бы купил себе новую машину. If I had money, I would buy myself a new car. Если я бы учился достаточно, я бы сдал экзамен. If I had studied enough, I would pass the exam. Если тебе бы нравился футбол, мы бы могли играть вместе. If you would have liked football, we could have played together. Если я не был бы болен, я бы пошел. If I were not sick, I would go. Если она бы спросила, я бы поговорил с ней. If she had asked, I would speak with her. Если ты бы оделся, тебе не было бы холодно. If you would have dressed up, you would not have been cold. In some sentences, the grammar changed in English, and it had to be done on purpose to generate a better meaning because of the imperfective and perfective aspects. Some sentences also use the short b when placed after a word that ended in a hard vowel, so that's how complex if sentences work in Russian. Let's continue with emotional desire. Emotional desire in the Russian subjunctive uses common verbs to express a wish, desire, request, or command because of subjectivity. One person's desire could be different than someone else's wish, which is why it's called the subjunctive. Emotional desire describes possible actions that would happen using verbs that give polite requests, mainly in the past tense, like хотеть, to want, желать, to wish, and смотреть, to watch or to look, along with the word бы in the conditional. Я бы хотел купить эту машину, потому что она мне нравится. I would like to buy this car because I like it. Я бы попросил больше видео для просмотра. I would ask for more videos to watch. Я бы посмотрел новый фильм, который вышел. I would watch the new film that came out. Ты бы не мог помочь мне, пожалуйста? Could you help me, please? Да, я могу помочь тебе с твоим желанием. Yes, I can help you with your wish. This is how emotional desire works in the subjunctive. Let's continue with the conditional mood with the word чтобы, also known as subordinate clauses. I would say that subordinate clauses with the word чтобы are the most complex topic in the Russian subjunctive because they have the most amount of meanings, and their structure is different in Russian than in English, but it is possible to connect them. In subordinate clauses, two clauses do not refer to the same subject, in which the word бы is incorporated with the word что, чтобы. This word, чтобы, connects a main clause and a subordinate clause, which can be translated as the conjunction that. When talking about two different subjects, the word чтобы has to utilize an action in the past tense, most of the time the perfective, to convey the meaning that. And while Russian has one way to express it, English has two. Take a look at the following phrase. I want you to eat. In English, we tend to combine the pronoun with the action, which is why the sentence feels more like a request. But in Russian, it's not possible to say a sentence like that because there are two different subjects. Another way to express it, which connects more to Russian, is I want that you eat. It's still possible to say it in English, but it's completely not formal. But this is the construction that Russian has with чтобы. I want that you eat. Я хочу, чтобы ты поел, with the comma. In this case, we have one subject я and a different subject ты, and the perfective verb поесть conjugated in the perfective past. So as I said, when talking about two different subjects, the word чтобы has to utilize an action in the past tense, mainly perfective, to convey the meaning that. I want that you eat. Я хочу, чтобы ты поел. I want you to eat. This is how the conditional mood with the word чтобы works in Russian, and when giving examples, I'll show them both formally and informally so that you can see the construction in both cases. Я хочу, чтобы вы посмотрели это видео и выучили русский. I want you all to watch this video and learn Russian. The informal construction would be, I want that all of you watch this video and learn Russian. Ты пришел, чтобы я мог поговорить с тобой об этом. You came so that I could speak with you about this. In this case, we're using the construction so that and an imperfective verb in the subordinate clause. Он не хочет, чтобы ты уходил куда-то. He does not want you to go anywhere, or he does not want that you go anywhere. Они попросили меня, чтобы я выгулял их собаку. They asked me to walk their dog, or they asked me that I walk their dog. Она открыла окно, чтобы не было жарко. She opened the window so that it would not be hot. In this case, we have so that, and the regular imperfective было. Generally, this is how the subjunctive mood works with чтобы in Russian, but these are not the only sentences that чтобы can work with. Other phrases are also used in the subjunctive, like it's important that, it's urgent that, it's necessary that, and so on. These short phrases are all main clauses and impersonal expressions that connect with subordinate clauses with a past tense action using чтобы, which would act as that. The Russian subjunctive is most often used with these main and subordinate clauses, and in the case of чтобы, it acts like a conjunction that connects the impersonal expressions with subordinate clauses. Важно, чтобы вы посмотрели это видео. It's important that you all watch this video. Необходимо, чтобы вы научились чему-то. It's urgent that you all learn something. Нужно, чтобы вы запомнили это. It's necessary that you all remember this. Even though these are simple short sentences, they're still very important to know in the Russian subjunctive. Furthermore, the word чтобы also has a second meaning in Russian, and that is in order to. In English, we tend to sometimes omit it when we speak, but we do so to save time, like, I watched this video to learn Russian. Formally, it's an incomplete sentence, so the full sentence is, I watched this video in order to learn Russian, where in order to precedes an infinitive. When putting this phrase in Russian, я смотрю это видео, чтобы учить русский, we have the word чтобы, which conveys the meaning in order to, and it's also placed before an infinitive. Such phrases with чтобы can also be written in the opposite way. Чтобы учить русский, я смотрю это видео. In order to learn Russian, I watch this video. Even though it's not a big concept, with чтобы, I wanted to quickly mention it in case you see it in any other sentence. So you would know that чтобы has two meanings, one in the subjunctive and one as a subordinating conjunction, which can be used inside and outside the subjunctive. Anyhow, let's finish the Russian subjunctive with suggestions and advice. The Russian subjunctive can be used to offer suggestions and advice, which is similar to the English constructions, it would be better, or why don't you, etc. These phrases are mainly applicable in Russian conversations, and they act more like expressions as opposed to literal translations. And also, they use the conditional mood. Ты бы сходил к врачу. You'd better go to a doctor. Ты бы надел теплую куртку, потому что очень холодно. You'd better put on a warm jacket because it's very cold. Вы бы не облокачивались на дверь, потому что она может открыться. You'd better not lean on the door because it can open up. Вы бы поспали немного после дороги. You'd better sleep a little after the trip. Вы бы отдохнули немного. You'd better rest a little. Overall, this is how suggestions and advice work in the subjunctive, and this is how the subjunctive fully works in Russian.